haven't done this. I
Mhm.
haven't done it in so long. I forgot to do it.
Mhm.
So this is episode 37 of
Ellen.
Living Out Loud. Hi, and we kind of like took a
There
hiatus
was a hiatus because
because
February just about killed everybody, but
we had some events. You had some personal events, and then
yeah.
you were sick.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went
You
to San
away.
Diego for my nephew's graduation from the Navy SEALs,
Mm-hmm.
which was super inspiring.
Oh,
Like
good.
it was, it's kind of crazy, right? Like, I mean, that was what I was hit with. Like we got there and it's on the naval base on Coronado Island,
Mm-hmm.
in California. And you get to the base and you go to the spot where the graduation is, which I actually can't talk about.
I'm familiar.
And
Yep. Yep.
it can't talk about,
I know, but I can't talk about what I know you know too.
right. So the guy who started talking, the commanding officer for my nephew's class of
Mm-hmm.
SEALs, said, you can take pictures and you can take video, but none of it can be shared on any social media because as of today, they are considered active duty Navy
Mm-hmm.
SEALs. So their images
That's it.
cannot be
Mm-hmm.
shared.
Yes.
And you're sitting there going, what did I just walk into? Like, I
Yeah.
mean,
Like,
it's,
never mind. Yeah.
you feel like you're in a movie. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
seriously, you feel like you're in a movie. You're like, are we something gonna happen? But it was awesome. It was great. San Diego's totally cool,
Yeah.
obviously. Um, just, like awesome, like saw an aircraft carrier, like
Huh?
fighter
Yeah,
jets are flying
that's my every
overhead.
day. I mean, there was just one flying
It-
over here a minute ago. Yeah.
but it's so cool,
It's really,
like
yeah,
you go back to almost being like a kid, like
exciting.
whenever a fighter jet would go over, we'd all be like, oh, like I mean, and we'd all like sit there and watch it, which is
Yep.
like these people every day. And we're like,
Yeah.
blown away. So I'm blown away just by people choosing to dedicate their lives to that
Hmm.
and to be part of that and to know what they're going to potentially go into at any
Yeah.
time.
Yep.
I think we need to have more of an appreciation I mean, we have an appreciation, but when you're that close to it,
Yeah.
you have a bigger appreciation of what these people are doing,
Oh,
like
and then,
what
yeah.
they're doing and willing
And,
and willing to do and
and
willing to do.
yeah.
So, shout out to the military,
Hmm.
every branch, every form,
Hmm.
you know, that's a commitment
Absolutely.
that, you got to be a certain type of person to choose to do that. You
Yeah.
really do. And I know I'm not that person. I mean, like, I couldn't get through Girl Scout camp, man. There's no way I could have gotten through any of what they did. I'd have been dead after the first week of basic training. So yeah, so that I had a great appreciation for that.
Hmm.
And I'm glad we're back here now for episode 37. When this whole podcast was started, to be a support for, hi, honey, to be a support for domestic violence victims and survivors. And that is still our main
Oh, yeah.
focus. We have explored other themes
Sure.
within the episodes, just the themes of life, basically.
Yeah.
Today, um, we're going to do infidelity. Now, this is so important in
Mm.
so many different ways. Okay. Infidelity is tough to fully explain. It's like trying to pin down a cloud,
It
right?
really is.
Because
Yeah.
it's so subjective,
Very much
right?
so. Yeah.
It is so subjective as to each individual person what counts as infidelity.
Mhm.
Okay. Like I was reading this article on this site called Very Well Mind.
Mhm.
And it was, one person could consider watching pornography cheating, another person could consider it healthy and natural.
Yep. Absolutely.
So,
When there was a whole other, and we were around for it, but when the internet culture started and people started engaging with people online, there was a lot of gray area in marriages about, is that infidelity? Is it not? If you're just, so with the internet, another whole another facet of things opened up too.
well, because, and I've heard the statement and I've made the statement myself. Social media, Facebook, messaging, Snapchat, Instagram, DMs,
Yeah.
have made cheating easier.
Oh yeah, sure.
I mean, for those who are driven to cheat, it has made cheating easier. And everybody has a story, or everybody's heard a story, after Facebook started, people are going on there and they're adding their friends from high school and from college and blah, and you hear, oh, my ex-boyfriend from college reached out to me, like it happened, like, and
Yeah.
I don't mean to make people panic, who are in solid relationships. I'm not saying that
No, because
that's
and that
gonna,
goes to say, what you were leading into, which
right.
is, the crux of infidelity. It doesn't matter whether it's 2025 or 1825. If that's how you're wired or that's where you're headed, then that's where you're headed. Yeah.
Okay, so in this article from Very Well Mind, right, the different types of infidelity, adultery, cheating, whatever, physical,
Mm-hmm.
physical, emotional,
Mm-hmm.
and then of course they had to add in cyber, right?
Yeah.
Um, so,
Which
and
is
this is
almost
why
such an outdated word too, right?
I
Cyber.
know I don't really know what a better term
But
is. I don't know if there is
but
a
it's
better term.
true. It's true. But I mean, virtual, I don't know.
And so, and in this article it says, infidelity unfortunately is very common. They can't actually put a percentage on it because it's so subjective and people consider different things cheating. But
True.
they say in the article, rates of infidelity in relationships, not just marriages, could be, partners, boyfriend, girlfriend, vary from 20% to 50%, right? Because we can't really,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can't nail
you
it.
can't really say, so, and there's a number of different reasons. Like, that's the big question. Why do people cheat? Why do people cheat? Right. I'm going to tell you what it says in this article, and then you tell me from the field. So
Yeah.
in the article, there's a couple of different things here. And they do preface this by saying cheating can happen in good relationships
Mm-hmm.
and in bad relationships.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a dissatisfaction with a certain aspect of the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It could be the person who cheats is having an issue with self-esteem
Mm-hmm.
and personal value and worth.
Okay.
And an affair boosts
Ego
their
and
self-esteem and their ego. There's also, of course, things like sex addiction,
mm-hmm.
um, risk, wanting to feel alive, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and that probably goes back to dissatisfaction with a certain aspect of the relationship, right? Like maybe it's become,
Yeah, but then if you throw in other factors like mental health, what if there's a bipolar disorder or something? Yeah, and then there's the risk. Yeah, go ahead.
I
Uh,
mean, and so it's so very individual and personal,
yeah.
and and obviously has a gigantic stigma for the person who cheats,
Mm-hmm.
right? You hear about, once a cheater, always a cheater. I don't necessarily think that's true,
I don't think
because
that's.
I think you go through different phases in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, there are people out there who are serial cheaters. Okay. And that, to me, I think there's a deeper root cause for being a serial cheater than just being an asshole,
Well,
or
I
being a
think
bitch, or
a
being what,
serial anything has a deeper root. You're a serial eater, you're a serial smoker, you're a serial chopper, whatever. There's a deeper.
serial murderer. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, right.
so yeah, so serial, repeated, consistent, chronic
Yep.
cheating, that is a symptom of something
Yep.
else.
Mm-hmm.
And then, okay, so, and then I'm going to say one more thing, because there is a school of thought
Okay.
that, and then you can address and go off on your,
Okay.
your clinical information. There's a school of thought as well that cheating is emotional abuse.
Okay.
And that cheating is emotional abuse because, and I had to take a screenshot of this so I didn't forget it. Oh no, where'd it go? I did take a screenshot. Oh, wait, here it is. Okay, I take that back. Infidelity is sometimes seen as a type of domestic violence because it can be just as demoralizing and harmful as a physical assault.
Mm, okay.
Now, right. Okay. And then it can also be considered a form of financial abuse if the spouse is
Okay.
draining marital assets. Okay. So there's a
Yeah.
lot here
Mm.
that goes beyond classic meeting up in a hotel room having sex with someone. Okay, like there's a lot here. So tell me your thoughts on that, on
Yeah.
those items.
So I've seen it all.
Yes, you have.
And I've seen
You've
and
lived.
I do see infidelity as a multifaceted dynamic between um two people.
Or
Um
three.
yeah, or three. And all the things that you said I would agree with. I think that they can fall under that. Um and I'm going to start with one thing, and I'll use so my ex before there's kind of two facets of this, but
Okay.
so she we were together 8 years and she was a serial cheater, but and
Okay.
it was layered. It was physical, it was emotional. She had no boundaries. The only way that she found external validation was attention. And I realized that I was part of that mix, but didn't realize it at the time. Um, and for her, gender was not an issue. It was, she was primarily a straight, and I think this is important because when you remove the natural kind of constructs,
Okay.
it, and we talk about the kind of serial cheater, all of a sudden they don't care about gender, they don't care about uh financial structure, they don't care, they don't have a type, they, whatever. It's my need is I need your attention. And often those dynamics um aren't even about the sex. The sex is just a means to an end. It's the external validation, right?
Okay.
And I think
And it
that's
doesn't, you're saying that you're saying like so what I think you're saying is someone who has been historically straight would welcome attention
or
from,
vice versa,
or
historically,
vice versa,
or
would,
historically gay, and it's
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 the
the
attention
attention.
that matters.
Yeah. So, and often that person will have very loose layers of identification. They identify in how other people mirror them, right? So if they don't have any real clear identity, um, that's something to keep in mind. A lot of people, if they need to define themselves by the people around them, um, I have seen that to be a common theme, excuse me, of people who have a tendency to get in boundaryless relationships.
Okay.
Okay, which can lead to sex, but not always.
But
They
not
can
always.
they can be emotionally boundaryless,
Oh,
and it can look okay on the surface if they're not in a committed relationship, right?
right.
So
Because,
it's
if you're an adult and you're not committed to someone,
excuse me,
you,
yeah,
if you're an adult and you're not in a committed relationship, like spoken commitment, whether that be marriage vows or it's
whatever.
you and me, we're monogamous, we're in this together, then you
So
can do
here's my
what you
point
want.
before I exactly, and here's my point. Here's the hitch.
Okay.
There is no problem
Mhm.
unless you're in a committed relationship, right? So this issue in your life does not come to the surface unless you're in a committed relationship. Therefore, you're less likely to look at the fact that you don't have a good solid core, things of that nature, because you're just living this life. And it's really not identified as an internal issue. it's now you're a serial cheater. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
So, okay, and obviously one of the biggest fallouts of infidelity when it is discovered, and it's always discovered,
Mm-hmm.
um, either because the person confesses or, like they said in this article, there are red flag behaviors for
Yeah.
someone who is engaging in a relationship outside of their committed relationship. And I think
Whether you want to look at them or not, see them or not.
and
Yeah.
some people don't want to look at them.
Yeah.
And okay, because they don't want to lose the life that they know, right? So they're going to ignore that their spouse or partner is going to the gym now and got a new haircut and bought new clothes and is going on more work trips or is on their phone all the time, or your sex life is falling off, right? Like some people ignore that, some people latch right onto it.
Mm-hmm.
It depends. So the fallout of infidelity normally is a betrayal of trust.
Mm-hmm.
It is the person who was cheated on
Mm-hmm.
feeling not good enough, worthless,
Mm-hmm.
undesirable,
Mm-hmm.
not loved anymore,
Right.
might not feel like they know this person anymore that they thought they knew.
Right.
There's some heavy mental and emotional things that happen
Yeah.
after infidelity that go far beyond if
Well,
your partner had physical sex with somebody else.
and
That
and
goes
that's
far beyond
the
that.
issue is the people that get cheated on, and now I'm talking about the people that the infidelity is a symptom of something else. Okay, so
Okay.
that's what I'm focusing on.
Mhm.
Um, then the people that got cheated on are caught in all this crossfire and collateral damage. And often that'll bring those people into an office like mine, and I'll take
Mhm.
that opportunity with that type of personality to go, well, maybe we should look at why you have no discernment. Anybody that gives you attention, this is where you go. Um, and if they take that opportunity to do some self-exploration, great. And I have seen relationships survive that. But if the individual isn't willing to look at the fact that maybe this infidelity is a symptom, and have you had it your whole life? Well, yeah, by the time I was 16, this is how I got attention, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so this is a long-standing thing. And unfortunately, your spouse just got nailed by it.
Right.
Um, but often you're right. It's hard to get somebody in if for some reason that dysfunctional behavior is working for them, unless they're in a relationship, because then it's easy to blame the relationship, right?
And here is another thing, and I'm sure that this comes up. Huh. You have to be pretty, pretty, pretty secure in yourself that if your spouse or partner cheats on you, you can say to yourself, this has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
It is not a deficiency in me, right?
Mhm.
You've got to be pretty secure in yourself to look at that person and say, okay, there's something going on inside of you. And
Mhm.
this operated outside of our unit.
Can I share something with you? Here's a personal thing. So
Absolutely.
I was only 27 years old, and I'm going to give myself some props. My ex was 10 years older than me,
Okay.
and she was having a pretty serious affair with a man, but she was not admitting to it. Excuse me, but we were talking all around it. Anyway,
Mhm.
there was this one moment, whether she was going to admit to it or not, because I had known her and I saw the pattern prior to my involvement. I just got caught in the web. Um,
Happens.
Said, here's your opportunity. Here it is. I said, go live with him. Go give it a shot. Go see
Explore
that.
it.
I said, this is a repeat of behavior. I said, but this is the one shot you get. Go see.
It's pretty big of you.
Yeah. And I actually loved that moment of clarity because I wasn't afraid of, I got out of my own head. I was like, this is a huge learning moment for you, and you can break this pattern you've been doing since you were 15 years old. Go. Relationships were a collateral mishap for her. She'd get involved with people and then have these relations. I'm like, do it. See if this is what you want. And she didn't. Instead, she engaged in some other things. So it was very easy for me. And the benefits of getting yourself out of it is when you do walk away, there wasn't any part of me that ever felt like I didn't do everything I could have done to be helpful, to see my integrity. So even though it was an ugly breakup and she blamed me for everything, I was good. I was like, no, man, I did my part, you know?
I think that I think that's kind of incredible because okay, two things.
Hmm.
I don't think a lot of people would do that
I wouldn't expect a lot of people to do that. No.
because it would be fear of losing the person,
Hmm.
even though this person did what they did.
Hmm.
Fear of losing the person, fear of losing the relationship,
Sure.
um, fear of being rejected for another person, which that's a tough concept, but I really think people sometimes need to realize you're not being rejected. You're
That's a,
not actually being rejected,
again, that's the part
right?
that's not actually about you, which is very hard to
That's
do
hard
when you are right in the middle of the damage. Yeah.
because you know what you do in those situations or what people do is and I've seen it. I have, personal experience with friends, people I know
Hmm.
that were cheated on and lost their relationships, and you lose your mind a little bit. You
Hmm.
got to find out who this person is. You got to look this person up. You're going to go on LinkedIn. You're going to go on Facebook. You're going to go on Instagram. You need to see what they look like. You need to see what they do. Do they have kids? That you are almost obsessed.
Yep. And one of the things too I run into is they want to know what they did with the person. And I always try to move people away from that. It's damaging.
They
But
want
when
the
Yeah,
details.
but when you feel out of control of something, the more you want to harness the details, and it never goes well. I've never had, personally or professionally, ever had a situation where, well, really good to know how this person, gave you a blowjob. So glad that you know about her skills now. It never went well, ever. It was
Why
just
would it? I
like,
mean, that is, you know what my sister says? My
hmm,
oldest sister, Elizabeth. She has this phrase: if you're going to dial 1-800-PAIN, someone's going to answer.
oh, I like that.
Someone's going to answer. If you're going to go looking, you're going to find it. Okay.
Hmm.
And then, as we know, and again, take the gender out of it, you find out who this other person is, and you start comparing yourself to them from head to toe to what they do for a living as compared to what you do for a living, like, I mean, you just start. And so that was a question I was going to ask you
Sure.
in regard to what you just shared about your partner when you were 27 and
Yeah.
she was in a relationship with a man.
Yeah.
As a gay woman, did that bother you less than if it would have been a woman?
Um, it was
And
interesting
I know
because
that's a
I saw
weird
her.
question,
No, no,
but
no, no. I think it's a great question. So I would run in, to be honest with you, if she had just gone and screwed this dude, and but for her, it was never about that. I'd watch her do this with women too, where it was she'd try to be the shiny thing and pull them in, or there was a lot of narcissism kind of stuff going on. Her best friend from high school would show up and then I would disappear. I didn't exist. It was whose attention do I want in the moment. So for me, I that was already so embedded that by the time I realized that she was in a physical relationship with this guy, um, I think the the only realization that I really had. Oh,
love you, Kate. Love you, Kate.
love you back. Um, for me, there were so many other dynamics going on at that point because I had seen this behavior that it was very confusing for me. Um, but the only thing it was almost freeing in some ways because I'm like, can't compete with that. For me, it was just like, I can't compare myself to that because there's nothing I can do. So, number one, it was like, wow, if that's what you really want, there's really nothing I can do about that. So there was some of that.
Okay.
Um, and there was something freeing about that because I couldn't fight that. There was nothing, what are you gonna do?
Yeah. It's like
But what I'm trying to say is that I didn't want to, because there's also different dynamics. I've certainly had clients where there was somebody repressing their sexuality and they actually were gay and they're having an affair with someone of the same sex. Now that's a whole different dynamic. With my ex, it was not a gender dynamic. She could never even really identify her sexuality. For her, it was like, who's giving me the attention? But
okay.
there's other.
So I was actually just going to say that, where I've read articles, you know, couple gets married, young, whatever, um, find out 10, 12 years later that, let's just use the husband discovers he's gay,
Yeah.
they get a divorce, but they end up still loving each other, like they, as
Yeah.
people, right? As people. And the wife's like, okay, well, he's gay. I mean, what, I'm
I
not
wrote
his
that, but
I'm
there's
not his
something here.
flavor, right?
There,
But I can still love
yeah,
him as a person, and they stay
that's,
friends.
and I think that's where we run into the emotional abuse, right? So, like, let's go to my situation. The the affair was not the abuse. The abuse was being made to feel like it was my fault, being
Right.
made to think I was crazy when I presented clear evidence.
That's
There's a
always fun.
used condom in my truck, and you're telling me I don't know how that got there. I mean, just yeah, sorry, too many details, but
No, not at all.
yeah,
You don't think that hasn't happened before? I mean,
yeah.
but I would just be like, in my fucking, I mean,
But
like,
at
I
that point, she's like, oh,
really,
I must have left the door unlocked. I can't believe that somebody did that. And my dumb ass, was
ooh,
like,
wow, she's good.
yeah, I was like, oh, you're probably
Oh,
right. You don't work in the best neighborhood. You definitely lock the doors. But, and again, like you said, not my reality. I'm not a cheater. It's just not what I do. So I don't understand that mindset. However, I will say with this ex, I did cheat on her one night, which is when Liz and I got together. And then I left her. And then Liz and I have been together for 20 years. So I don't know if it was a cheat or if it was, I'm like, oh, there you are, you know.
okay, so and here's another thing.
Yeah.
And this is why this issue is there's so much to it.
Layered. I know. It's just,
So much to it. When you become part of a committed relationship, whether as a spouse
mhm,
or a partner,
mhm,
whether it's legal, holy, whatever, all that
whatever.
stuff.
Hmm.
What people tend to forget and what tends to happen is that you forget that you're still two individuals
Hmm.
existing as a couple,
Hmm.
but you're still two individuals, which means even though you are compatible and that is why you are together, still have your own personal thoughts, ideas, wants, needs, right? So I think, when people hear, you know, so and so cheated on so and so, oh my God, are you kidding me? They were such a great couple. How could that happen? Because it's not a couple activity, friends.
Good
It is
point.
an individual
Yeah.
activity. It was something going on in the one person that
Mhm.
caused them to go outside of their relationship for whatever reason,
Mhm.
whether it was dissatisfaction with their current relationship, whether it's a sex addiction, whether it's, a self-esteem boost, which seems like kind of a cop out, but I mean, hey, it's a
Yeah.
big deal. Um,
But again, that external gratification, like we were talking about. Yeah.
the external gratification. And so there are people who can be in a committed, someone would say like self-esteem issue. What do you mean? They have a wife, they have a husband, they have a partner. Your marital status does not automatically make you like secure and all level. I mean, there are people who are in marriages who feel more lonely than they were when they weren't married.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So your marital status, your relationship status doesn't fix everything inside of you. It doesn't fix everything. And I'm not condoning cheating and I'm not defending it. I'm not, because I think it's one of the most hurtful things that can happen because of how the other person receives it.
Yep.
But at the same time, it might not have anything to do with you.
Yeah.
They didn't
When I, so,
they didn't come home and say,
no.
I cheated on you because you're ugly and I haven't liked your personality
Except
since we had kids.
except when they turn it around and turn it into you, and that's when it becomes domestic, it becomes abusive. I did
Yeah,
this because of you did
damaging,
this. Yeah.
damaging. Right.
And that's not fair. And that is malicious intent because of you don't want to take account, whatever the reason. But then it's abusive. Yeah.
And you know what? Okay, I have an example. I have a personal life example. I think about this now. The same thing. I look back at it and I'm like, was I totally stupid? I mean, right? I had just given birth to Peter.
Okay.
Okay. Peter's 22.
Okay.
He was 2 weeks old.
Bobby.
So as you know, when they're 2 weeks old, you're up constantly nursing and whatever, right? My ex-husband, feeling the binds of fatherhood, needed to go out for a boys' night, right?
Okay.
So, which is hilarious because I literally like had Peter and my ex-husband went to work the next day. His life did not change.
Right.
His life did not change.
Yes.
So his friend comes to visit and they go out.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay. And so, obviously nursing at 11, nursing at 1, nursing at 3 in the morning,
Yep.
nursing at 5 in the morning.
Yep.
And since I'm up round the clock, not hard to realize that they're not back yet.
Mhm.
So 5 in the morning and 7 in the morning,
Oh,
right?
okay.
And then 9 in the morning. And I'm like, so of course, my first thought, are they dead?
Right. No, sure. Yeah.
Are they
That's what I
dead?
would think.
Did
Yeah.
they get into a car accident? Are they passed out drunk on, on Elmwood Avenue? Like I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was funny because his friend was staying overnight because he was from out of town. But he comes home and we lived in an upper flat in the city. So I can hear him coming up the stairs. And he comes in by himself because his friend was probably like, I want no part of what this is going to be. Right. So he comes up the stairs, like, and he's like, hey, I was like, hey, like, hey, I'm like, it was 10 o'clock in the morning.
Oof.
I'm like, you've been gone for like 15 hours and you have a 2 week old. Like, and
Yeah.
he said, and this, and looking back at it now, it's amazing, right? To me, it's amazing. He got mad at me
Of course.
and he said, and literally had no problem being like, we went out, so and so knows a girl who lives on Richmond. We stayed there. I said, Richmond is around the corner from where we live.
Oh, well. Right.
I'm like, so you stayed, because his friend was single. I'm like, you stayed at a woman's apartment? And I'm just, and he was like, yeah, we were just really drunk. And I was like, you're really drunk and you couldn't go the next half a mile to get to your house. I mean, and at the time, newborn baby brain, right? Exhausted, like not totally with it. That was the first one. I look back at it now and I'm like, something definitely happened that night.
Mhm.
Something definitely happened that night. A couple of years later, I have all 3 kids,
Yeah.
and the youngest is probably 2.
Okay.
And he went to a wedding for a coworker,
Okay.
did not ask me to go with him, although he had a +1. I
Okay.
stayed home with the kids, right? So my cell phone rings and it's him. And it's like 11 o'clock at night. So I answered it and he had butt dialed me
Oh.
and he was in a car with a woman.
Oh.
And I can hear them talking, right? And I'm yelling his name so that he knew that he had called me. So he knew, so he could know, and he must not have been able to hear me. I could hear him like begging her, like to give him a ride, to like let him get in the car, let him go with her. And I'm just like, so I hung up. I went to bed. Don't know how he got home. And the next day I said, you butt dialed me and you were in a car with a woman. I go, and I was trying to get your attention, in kind of an effort to make you shut up. And so I didn't have to listen to this. And I was like, so what, like, what are we facing here? Like, what happened? And he just started crying.
When my ex finally spilled out that she had been sleeping with this guy,
Mhm.
she I was driving and she fell to the bottom of fell to the bottom of the she was in the passenger seat, fell to the floor. Oh, my stomach. Oh, my stomach. And then we ended up going to the emergency room and I left her there because I was like, but that
I left her ass there.
like,
But so like he burst into tears, and you know what that told me? Guilt.
oh yeah.
Guilt.
Yeah.
We never talked about it again.
Well, it makes sense to me. I mean, we've talked about narcissists and my ex also very much so, not as smart as your ex. When you add that, well,
Saying my ex is smart.
he had more intelligence than my, where what made his behavior a little bit more calculated, is what I mean.
Oh, I
Where
see. You mean like evil genius smart.
yeah, that kind of, if you had added some more general, she was of average intelligence, but not enough to weave the web she wanted or thought she
Mhm.
was weaving. And if I had just opened my eyes a little bit, it was pretty obvious what was going on. But oh shoot, what was I going to say? Oh, because of that, when you run into somebody that, like I was saying, has no core and they're just constantly wanting that attention from the outside. This is why a lot of performers, musicians, and stuff have a hard time. And I don't like to make a generalization, but that's probably not good. But if you have a tendency to seek validation solely
Mhm, mhm.
from external sources, and you don't have a solid sense of self, you will find that people like that have more of a tendency to cross boundaries in a variety of different ways. Yeah.
Right. And so it's I think it's probably difficult for anybody who was cheated on, and a marriage ended because of it, or they went on to they divorced. They said infidelity is the biggest cause of divorce.
Sure.
It's the biggest one. Because there's so many other issues attached to it. Like I said, it's not just them having sex with another
Unless there
person.
isn't, unless you just went, I mean, I've also worked through stuff where guys went off to Vegas and got a hooker and got caught. I know, but those things I've actually had more success working through those than the other stuff. So
So, and especially if, God, it's got to be such a mind fuck. It really does. Especially if you divorce, the relationship ends, and they end up with the person that they cheated on you with.
So here's the thing that I just want, I get now we're gonna have to do another because now I'm just getting all revved up. My ex has the audacity to, she still runs in, all of our friends were mostly my friends, but I walked away and I said to everybody, look, you don't know the whole story. I know you think I'm this horrible person. I literally kissed Liz one night, told my ex the next morning what happened.
And then it was over.
And then I'm like, I gotta go. I gotta figure this out. But I was checked out 2 years prior. Actually, I couldn't figure out how to make all the logistics. But oh shit. What, see? What we're
I said, especially if they end up with the person that they cheated
Oh,
on you
oh,
with.
yes. And to this day, she still blames the results of her terrific life of me ending up with Liz. And I'm like, okay, dude. Yeah, it's so terrible for you. I'm so sorry. I ended up with, okay.
Here's another thing, and this is classic, and we've actually, I think, touched upon this briefly once before. when infidelity happens, and no matter who it is, the person who is cheated on immediately blames the person their partner cheated on them with. They seem to skip right over
Yep.
the spouse or partner, and they go right to the person they cheated on them with. And they must be a horrible person. They're a homewrecker. They're a slut. They're whatever.
Which is
And
really like this conversation you had with this individual that came forward and talked to you. That I loved that whole dynamic, that very mature adult exchange happened. Yeah.
I'm sure she's had some words for me when she first found out. But and I think about that situation now, because she clearly started doing some research, started doing some digging. I was not the only one.
Yeah.
I was not the first one. I was not the last one. So there, and she's incredibly secure in herself because what she said to me was like, he's got a problem.
Yeah.
He's got a problem. She didn't say like, what did I do? What's wrong with me? Like she was like, he's got issues. Like they need to be looked at. He needs to speak to somebody. Um, and you never, man, you just never know, like there are people who are solid for years in relationships and just get triggered. Like something happens, I mean, of course, we've got the whole midlife crisis thing that sometimes happen to people, um, by the way, I have I already told you about Tilda is visible. I already told you about that.
Yep.
When people get to a certain age and they feel like they're becoming invisible,
Yeah.
in society, they feel like they're not, heads aren't turning when they walk in the room anymore.
Yeah.
And that goes with aging.
Mhm.
Um, and people, that's a very personal feeling.
Mhm.
Okay. That is a personal feeling that exists outside of a coupledom.
Mhm.
Your spouse could say to you all day long, I still think you're gorgeous. You're more beautiful than you were the day that I met you. La
Right.
la 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 la. And sometimes these people need to hear it from somebody else,
Mhm.
right? Like,
Mhm.
and like you said, that's an external validation thing.
Mhm.
Some people could just take someone saying, oh, hey, you look nice today, and that could be enough for them.
Yeah.
Some people get a little flirtation going on at work and they want to pursue it
Yeah.
because it's like an addiction,
You got
right?
it.
Like
Yes.
it's exciting. And when people are in, and I will say this, when people are in an active, extra marital slash outside of relationship thing, they are not thinking clearly,
This is true.
right? Because
It is. Yes.
every interaction is a dopamine hit, and
Yeah.
they want another one and another one and another one. They aren't thinking clearly.
Yes.
They're not.
And excuse me. So
God, is it the plague?
yeah, I just am so stupid.
Leftover COVID?
Yeah, yeah. It's just
Mhm,
not giving it up.
mhm.
Um, so the yes, they're not thinking clearly. And if this way of life is okay for them, that's pretty notable right there. Like, for example, I was like, oh, whether Liz and I pursue this or not, clearly I have to go because I've crossed a line. Now she had crossed a line many years before, but for
And
me,
many times,
yeah,
right?
but that was irrelevant. For me, I'd never even had an emotional affair on her, let alone do anything physical. And so I'm like, oh, then I gotta go. I mean, I knew I had to go, but now I really gotta go. And I think that those are those notable, call them red flags, whatever you want, that tell you so much because you're right. A serial cheater is not thinking clearly. It's not an epiphany, which I consider my moment was. It's not um whatever. It's a maladaptive coping skill that's not serving you well. Yeah.
And you know how there's like the classic cliche of like when someone finds out that their spouse cheated, you'll hear like, I didn't mean to hurt you. I
Mm.
actually believe that in a lot of cases. I actually
I do.
believe that in a lot of
I do
cases.
that. Yeah.
They were not trying to actively hurt their spouse or partner. I mean, now, yes, we can say there are emotional abusive types of
Oh, no,
cheating where
that's the other
that's
stuff. You come
different.
back and you say horrible
That's different.
things about the person to their face. It's your fault, things like that. Yeah.
That's different. Um, I think when you hear that phrase, I didn't mean to hurt you.
Mm.
It's because they, and I don't mean this in a negative, bad way, it's because they weren't even thinking of you.
Oh no, it's very true.
So
It has nothing to do with you. That's the
that's and not I'm not saying they weren't even thinking of you because you don't matter, you're worthless.
no, you weren't
I'm
on there.
saying
You weren't a thought.
they're living in a total like almost alternate,
It's a
reality.
compartmentalized world. Yeah.
Yes.
Folks can really, who do that, can really compartmentalize to the point where they really, it feels like different lives. And that's not uncommon. Yeah.
No, it's not uncommon. I mean, like that's like sometimes you hear about, okay, we are gonna have to do a part two. But like how you hear about sometimes people have like two whole separate families and they're involved in both of them and love both of them. And a
Which,
lot of people would be like, how the fuck do you do it? Like, who has the time? But
well,
I mean, but they genuinely care for both,
it's true.
right?
Well, that goes into the polyamory. We were also going to talk about that too, but which again, I'm like, if there is honesty and an agreement, right? So you said, there's two people in a relationship, and when I'm doing work with folks, um, we look at the two different individuals and then we look at the relationship. And I do a lot of work where I want you to treat your relationship like the age it is, right? So if you're in a 7-year-old relationship, how would you communicate with your 7-year-old about a big emotional feeling?
Mhm,
You're going to be clear, you're going to be
mhm.
concise. So that being said, if your relationship's called it, if your relationship starts to do some exploration come around 12 years in, well, isn't that the adolescence of a relationship, pre-adolescence? So then you approach it that way as well. But again, it's about appropriate communication and the appropriate age of the relationship to explore those things, because some of them are just patterns. Like my ex, standard, within a couple of years of her relationship, she was going and looking else. Well, so was a 2-year-old. That was nice. I like that hug. Let me go get this, So, so she's the relationship is too young to come together as a unit and approach the dynamic as a couple.
That is super interesting to say that relationships age because they do.
They do.
They do. I mean, we celebrate anniversaries, right? That's a
Mhm.
clear sign that it's aging. And then, Esther Perel,
Mhm.
Esther Perel has said, like, 10 different marriages can exist within one marriage,
It's
right?
it is it's so true. And there are really fun ways to care for. There are stages of development in individuals, and there are stages of development in relationships, and they need to be treated with equal respect. And if you can come together in your relationship, say like I got a couple right now, and this one woman, she's got a chronic disease, and they're so worked up about the chronic disease that they're coming at each other, right? They're not, so my goal is to get them on the same page and see literally the cancer as the enemy, not the relationship, not each other. So then
Mhm.
they have to use the 10 years they've been together. How do you fire up a 10-year-old to beat an enemy? You know,
Put them on
identify.
Fortnite,
Yeah, right. How do you fire up a 10-year-old? So I'm like, your relationship's 10 years old and you've got a common enemy. Okay. Stop fighting each other. Come
right?
together. What does a 10-year-old do? A 10-year-old can really identify right and wrong pretty clear. A 10-year-old, what is a
Probably
10?
better than adults can.
You can't. And you know what 10-year-olds are really good at? And this is,
What?
I thought this was kind of a neat moment. 10-year-olds are good at, in a healthy mindset, they'll go ask for help. And this couple came and saw me, and I'm like, your 10-year-old relationship did the right thing. It came to get some help. So,
That's an interesting concept, and I want to talk about it more.
okay.
And then I also want to talk about in our next one, obviously fallout from infidelity and recovery from infidelity.
Which, yes, which can happen. Yeah, it's just, I remember just to go back in brand new relationships, like say, like you're engaging in an affair, right? Any relationship, sorry,
It's okay.
any relationship, a friendship, you can use this concept in any, but you're trying to negotiate with somebody you're having an affair with, and there's no history. It's just this infant that just wants to eat and, and and poop
Sleep.
and sleep. And you're like, no, but I'm here because, that relationship's not old enough to understand that. Why are you doing that? I mean, so, but one of the first things to do is to realize the expectations you're putting on the relationship, and what it's capable of handling. Yeah.
That's interesting because it's almost like in your relationship, there's a third factor, which is the relationship itself,
Exactly how I treat it. Yeah.
not just the people,
Yeah.
not just the people.
The people are the ones that are coming together. And then I used to say things like, if you got a 3-year-old relationship, they're like, oh, well, we're trying to go out and get babysitters and party. And I'm like, not babysitter. I'm like, you need a babysitter for the relationship. You need to protect the baby. You don't go into a party, you have a 3-year-old and just let them run wild. I mean, you can, especially since your relationship has a lot of insecurities, uncertainties, it's new. So what do you do to reassure a 3-year-old? A lot of reassurance, verbal reassurance, right? A
Mhm.
lot of affection and consistency. And if you can just do those 3 things when you're at a party, when you're feeling super insecure because you're in this relationship and you're trying to get over uncertainty, um, those things work. What do you do for a 3-year-old when they're nervous and insecure?
And sometimes relationship, you can have a relationship at 3 years of age that's working out just fine. And by the time it gets to be 10, it doesn't work anymore.
Because sometimes, and then that's another facet where if the relationship, because there's what happens too. We are assuming this model is working as the relationship is growing like this. But all of a sudden, if one of you went off and is growing up, and that part of you that can participate in a relationship is still growing, but your other half is not.
And then when that happens, as it happens more often than people think. And, I don't think there's anything wrong when it actually happens and we don't. Okay, listen, if we were supposed to be, people are supposed to have a couple different relationships in their life,
Mhm.
right? Like if we weren't meant to, then I would have married my high school boyfriend.
Right,
Okay. Like
right.
you're supposed to have, that's how you figure it out. Right. And do I, I just think it's life
Mhm.
that sometimes people will divorce after 30 years and go off and live their lives, the rest of their lives, the way they want to, because they realize that they weren't living it the way they wanted to.
Mhm. And
That
sometimes
comes with age.
it does. Yeah.
And I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing.
Mhm.
Like why stick in the relationship or the marriage because you want the 40th anniversary party? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
when you're not even fucking talking to each other and you haven't slept in the same bed since, 1989. I
Mhm.
mean, that I just don't understand some people's fixation on milestones within a marriage or a relationship
That's
that aren't
changing.
working,
I think
that
that's
aren't working.
changing, that aren't
Oh, it's
working.
definitely changing. It's definitely changing. Okay. So, all right, write down notes. I'm going to rewatch this and I'll make notes, but
Yeah, you
also write
make
down
notes because
what,
I
because
went
you
down a personal rabbit hole and lost my
lost your thread.
yeah, I lost my thread a little bit. All right. I'm so happy to see you. And
I
hopefully
know.
I'm
I'm
not
so happy to see you
coughing
too.
my brains out next week. Okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
hope you
right.
get
Oh,
hope you
well,
get hope you feel better.
it's
Um,
I'm tired
and
and
you know
cough.
what? It's the weather change too. I'll tell you what. I have vertigo. And
Oh, yeah.
when there are temperature swings
Yeah.
like we just had,
Mhm.
what it was 28 on Monday and it's 70 right now.
Yeah.
That messes me up, like, because it's the inner ear thing. It's, from one extreme to the other. So when it's consistent, I'm fine. But when we get into March, where it's
I was
like
having that
this,
today too, where I was sitting there and I was like,
feel a little off balance,
I feel
right?
like I'm like, yeah, going to, oh shoot, I gotta go. Speaking of
Okay.
being
All
at
right.
work and doing what I'm supposed to do. Okay, I will talk to you later.
All right. It sounds
Okay.
good.
All right,
And we will see each other soon.
we'll do part two. Okay.
Yes, we will. Part two.
Bye.
Okay.